Hey guys, so for this video I am going to be doing a series review of Resident Evil, the new show on Netflix. I grew up loving Resident Evil, and even if I do prefer the earlier ones as opposed to the later ones, but I'm still willing to watch it because, well, I loved it growing up, and there is some nostalgia. So yeah, and I will admit, I mean, I was disappointed by the series. I mean, I knew it's been getting shit anyways, but I've learned to go and watch it yourself, make your own opinion. So I was gonna watch it anyways. But yeah, I was disappointed. The pacing was atrocious in this movie or series. It felt so long and drawn out. Felt so many scenes were unnecessarily long, I guess. And so, yeah, it was slow getting through. So, but the synopsis of the show, it follows the daughters of Albert Wesker. I can never remember the names of the villains. But yeah, it follows Albert Wesker, and he has two daughters, Billy and Jade. And he has moved them to New Raccoon City, and he's living in this house provided by Umbrella because he worked for them, and so they also live in this compound, and they have a school where all the children of the Umbrella corporations attend school. And so they're not happy with having to move there. But one day, Billy, she goes into Umbrella and sees animals being tested on, and she's not happy about it. And so she convinces her sister to help her sneak in to Umbrella to free the animals. Not really thinking that, you know, they might be testing on them with something that probably should not get out. I mean, I hate animal cruelty, but also I hate fucking a world-ending virus as well. So, but yeah, she eventually releases the zombie dog, and yeah, she gets bitten, of course. Billy does, and she doesn't tell anyone, as per usual, and yeah, and then it kind of follows her as she slowly starts getting worse and worse. It's soon revealed that her father, he was taking blood from him and the two daughters because apparently he has this disease. And he ends up being a clone of the actual Albert Wesker, and I guess that he has some kind of disease because of it, and so he's using his daughter's blood as a, I don't know, cure? Not really a cure. It kind of helps him live longer, I guess. I don't know. Probably a lot of scientific mumbo jumbo, but yeah, I didn't care enough to actually go and look it up. Yeah, so eventually they find out that their father is, you know, a clone of Albert Wesker, and Billy and Jade just don't seem too concerned about keeping her locked up, because they do end up finding out that it's a virus because there's this, you know, guy who's, I think he knew what happened in the old Raccoon City, and so he's trying to warn them, and so they know the virus is dangerous and it can lead to the affected person violently attacking someone. But they decide to have the brilliant idea of going to a party with a lot of people, knowing that she's gonna possibly turn, and so yeah. There's also the big bad of Umbrella. It's, you know, this woman. I think she's a daughter of one of the villains in the series. I don't know. She's the one who has, you know, the Albert, Whisker, and all these clones, and locked up. And Albert's the one who eventually escapes. But yeah, it's hard to keep. It's hard to kind of, like, timeline wise, to remember what happened, because they have this really weird way of telling the story by having each episode start from in the past and then it shows the present, and so they'll do that for every episode, and honestly it blurs for me. The entire story blurs because it's just so confusing for me. So eventually Umbrella gets a hold of Billy and Jade, and they eventually escape, I think, and Albert ends up blowing up the umbrella, and of course one of the creatures ends up surviving and getting out. Can't remember what they're called. That was the past, and then and then it's like 14 years, somewhere along those lines, later, and Jade is, trying to figure out if the Zeros, because that's where they're called, the zombies now, so they're not really slow zombies anymore. They're like really fast, and they're called Zeros. And so she's and they're blind, and so they hunt by smell, so she can just sit there and watch them and not worry. But eventually, of course, she cuts herself, and so they start chasing her and everything. And then there's this giant mutant caterpillar. She eventually gets saved by these refugees. I don't know what you call them, because the world has now like gone to shit, and so there are little like communities of free people, and then there's Umbrella, and so they take him, and they take her, and then they're going to give her up to Umbrella, and she ends up escaping, and of course Umbrella kills the entire community because they're dumb enough to think Umbrella won't do that. But yeah, she escapes by jumping into a bunch of Zeros onto a Jeep, and then they end up, the Jeep ends up driving out, and she's able to escape, and she's following, trying to find this person that her father told her to find. She ends up running into, or ends up being led to this like lady who has her husband chained in the bathroom. And then she tries to escape with some of the other refugees. I think they're trying to get to France or something, and then they eventually get stopped by Umbrella, but then they get attacked by Lickers, and so they end up escaping into this tunnel which has this giant mutant spider. And though she eventually escapes and she gets to France, and then there's this religious cult, of course, who actually, one of the things I liked about the series was because the cult has these the Zeros they're using as manpower, and so they have them like chained to this well, and they're turning it and creating power, which I actually did like that idea. I thought it was kind of a cool concept. And apparently these Zeros are being controlled by this mother Zero, and so when Billy finds out about this, she wants to get to the Mother Zero. She's trying to figure out how she's able to control the Zeros. And so, one of the heads of Umbrella also gets captured as well, and so the two of them gang up so that they can escape. She eventually is able to escape, and she cuts off the head of the Mother Zero so that she's trying to figure out, because there's like this boil or something on her neck that seems to be like controlling them, and so she takes the head and escapes. And she immediately gets captured by Umbrella, and there's a big reveal that one of the Umbrella people is her sister Billy, which I have absolutely no idea how she became part of Umbrella. I might have missed it, because I thought that they had escaped Umbrella, but apparently they got separated. I don't know, really confusing, that part. But anyways, Billy, she's holding her captive, and then she reveals that Billy's been controlling the lady, the head of Umbrella. She's been controlling her with joy, which is a substance that Albert Wesker had created, that apparently can control you. And so she's been using that to unofficially control Umbrella. Yeah, she eventually releases Jade to go find the academy. That's what university. That's kind of like the people she's worked with. I think they're a group of scientists, and they travel by boat, and so they live on this boat. So she eventually goes there. She starts experimenting with the head to try to figure out what exactly is controlling the zeros, and so she takes a culture of boil, and then she's testing it, something, and then it's a lot confusing, but eventually she spits on it, and apparently that activates it or something, and eventually she's able to figure out that with some enzyme, there's two different enzymes, and she can create enzymes that will either repel the zeros or attract them. And so she has a brilliant idea to test this. So she goes to the ocean and grabs up a zero and brings it to the lab, not telling anyone, of course, and decides to test it. And it works at first, but then, of course, she has a daughter, and so the daughter was in the lab, and her daughter's standing behind her, and the zero sees her and goes crazy, and eventually escapes and kills one of the scientists who happens to be her pregnant friend. So yeah, that didn't go well. But yeah, she also learns that there's been a tracking device implanted in the head, so it turns out her sister had betrayed her. She wanted her to lead them to the university. Umbrella shows up, and she eventually surrenders herself because she just wants Billy. And so she goes to the encampment of Umbrella, and it's revealed that Billy is dying because she was bitten by a zombie, and she needs Billy's blood to survive. So I'm assuming much like her father, Albert, what was happening with him. But Jay doesn't like that, so she breaks one of the vials with the enzymes and attracts the zeros to her. And so we get this, honestly, one of the coolest scenes in the movie where we get the zeros, overwhelming the compound, the Umbrella compound, which is really cool. She eventually ends up escaping back to the boat, but of course, they end up, it's revealed that they've been towing a giant mutant alligator along the entire time. And apparently they can control the alligator. And so they release the alligator on Umbrella, and then it kind of goes, haywire on them. And so they get back to the boat. And then, of course, they find out that their daughter went back to shore because, of course. But then Billy eventually captures her. Jake goes back, tries to, convince Billy to take her instead of her daughter. But Billy, can use her daughter, and so she kidnaps her, and that's pretty much the end of it. If the past scenes were really, really slow, these scenes were really fast. It was like event after event after event, and no real slow time, I guess, to get your breath, I guess. So yeah, it was terribly paced, and there were elements of the story I was interested in. I found it interesting, but just the way that it was written, it just didn't work for me. I'm assuming it's probably not going to get a second season, despite it actually doing really well. It was streamed really well. It was actually the second most streamed Netflix shows globally. But it was also critically panned, so I never know what Netflix uses to determine whether to renew something or not. I heard they use, like, and how many views the show or gets for, like, the first certain amount of time. It's stupid. I was disappointed, but, I mean, if we get another Resident Evil. Actually, I think there's another Resident Evil. It's an animated movie that I did not know about, but apparently the library had it on order, so I'm going to watch that. And I know there's a few other animated movies that I haven't watched. I never got around to watching the animated movies, even though I want to eventually watch it, so. Yeah, that was my review of the Resident Evil show. So if you did like this review, give it a like, subscribe to get notifications for all the videos I'll be doing. You guys have a nice day. Stay safe out there, and talk to you later.